Unaware her husband was a billionaire CEO, Lana Carter secretly divorced the quiet man she thought was ordinary to marry a rich man who promised her the world, but the world she chose was about to bury her. Because Noah Carter, the man she walked away from, wasn't the failure she mocked, he was the power she never understood, the empire she never saw coming. He loved her like a king who hid his crown, gave her peace when she craved chaos, built a fortune under the same name she erased from her heart. But how does a woman destroy a man she never truly knew? How does a wife chasing wealth realize too late that the man she betrayed owned everything she ran to? And when love turns to vengeance, who really ends up poor, the wife who left, or the billionaire she thought she didn't need? The Dallas sun poured through linen curtains as Lana Carter stared at her husband across the breakfast table, a man too calm for her liking. Noah Carter wore the same navy shirt again. No Rolex, no designer tie, no arrogance, just quiet eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses and a half-finished cup of black coffee. "Do you ever get tired of being ordinary?" she asked, slicing her avocado toast with practiced irritation. Noah smiled faintly. "Ordinary is peaceful." Peaceful. The word annoyed her. She wanted chaos, applause, attention. The world had moved on. Instagram wives were flying private jets, while she sat in a modest suburban home with a man who didn't even post. Lana looked around their minimalist kitchen. No marble countertops, no chef appliances, just quiet perfection that mocked her hunger for more. "I had a dream last night," she said, eyes gleaming. "I was in Paris, watching the fireworks from a penthouse balcony." Noah nodded, flipping a page of the newspaper. "Maybe someday." Someday? That was the word he always used, someday. Later. Soon, as if her youth wasn't evaporating while he built stability. She stood up abruptly. "I married you for love, Noah, not for—" Her voice faltered when his phone buzzed. He reached for it calmly, but she caught a glimpse of the caller ID. Daniel Cole, corporate legal. Her pulse quickened. Noah never talked about work. He said he was just a manager at Carter Automotive. Yet she'd overheard whispers once Daniel was the firm's lead attorney. "What's Daniel calling you for?" she asked. "Work." "What kind of work?" "The kind that keeps the lights on." The calmness in his tone made her want to scream. He never explained himself, and that mystery felt like distance, not power. As Noah left for the day, she lingered by the window, watching him drive his gray Lexus, not even the latest model. When he disappeared, she scrolled through her phone, through lives brighter than hers, richer than hers, louder than hers. That's when she saw him, Ethan Miles, the man whose smile could buy silence. Billionaire tech investor, featured in Forbes 30 Under 40. The same man who had shaken Noah's hand at a charity gala last year, calling him old friend. Old friend? Noah had friends like that? Her lips curled. If Noah was content being invisible, maybe she needed someone who could make her seen again. That night, when Noah came home with flowers, her favorite white lilies, she barely looked up from her phone. "Long day," he said softly. "Mine too," she replied, texting Ethan Miles. The first spark of betrayal was quiet like a whisper before a storm. But storms, once born, never stop halfway. The night Lana Carter met Ethan Miles, the air itself felt different, thicker, louder, scented with money and the kind of power that made people straighten their posture without realizing it. The gala shimmered with chandeliers and laughter, champagne glasses clinking like tiny bells announcing temptation. Lana walked in wearing a silver dress. Noah had told her she didn't need. "You look perfect without trying," he'd said before staying home, claiming work. She'd smiled sweetly and lied. "It's just another charity event." But inside her, something whispered tonight could change everything. Ethan Miles spotted her before she even noticed him. He was surrounded by men who measured success in zeros and women who measured it in glances. He excused himself mid-conversation, walked over, and offered his hand. "You're Noah Carter's wife, aren't you?" The way he said it made her pulse skip. He wasn't asking, he was confirming something that intrigued him. "Yes," she replied, forcing a polite smile. "Do you know my husband?" Ethan's smirk carried weight. "Old business acquaintance. Quiet guy. Never talks much, does he?" "No," she said quickly, eyes softening into complaint. "He never does." There was a pause, the kind of pause where curiosity and opportunity shake hands. Ethan leaned closer. A man like that doesn't know what he's holding. Lana's throat went dry. The way he looked at her made her forget where she came from. He saw her not as someone's wife, but as a woman who'd been invisible for too long. They talked through the night, about dreams and risks and private islands. Every sentence from Ethan tasted like freedom, expensive, forbidden freedom. When she finally returned home past midnight, Noah was still awake, reading. He smiled when she walked in. "You look happy." "I am," she lied, kicking off her heels. "It was just refreshing." He didn't ask further. He never did. That quiet restraint, once comforting, now felt suffocating. The next morning, she stared at him over coffee and saw not a husband, but a man she'd already started to leave. Days passed. Messages became secret lunches. Lunches became hotel suites. Ethan's world smelled like new cars and private jets, like the life she was sure she deserved. He told her. Noah's company was barely floating, that her husband wasn't built for the big leagues, and she believed him because belief was easier than guilt. Noah noticed the shift, the late-night calls, the perfume that wasn't his gift, but he said nothing. When he touched her cheek one evening, her eyes flinched away. That was the night he truly understood. Kindness doesn't protect you from betrayal, it only makes it hit deeper. Weeks later, Lana sat in Ethan's penthouse, wrapped in silk sheets and champagne light, watching Dallas glitter below. She whispered, "He'll never know." Ethan smiled, brushing her hair aside. "Lana, men like him never do." But Noah already did. He had known for weeks, and while she fell deeper into the illusion, he was quietly preparing something she'd never see coming. Lana Carter sat in her car outside the courthouse, staring at the unsigned divorce papers on the passenger seat. The radio hummed softly, but her heartbeat was louder. Every lie she'd told, every secret message, every night she'd come home smelling of someone else, it had all led here. The end. The clean break. Freedom. She told herself this wasn't betrayal, it was strategy. "Noah's too kind," she murmured, rehearsing excuses in her head. "He'll understand." But she knew that wasn't true. Noah Carter didn't shout, didn't curse, didn't slam doors. His silence was the kind that echoed. When she walked into the kitchen that evening, Noah was chopping vegetables. He turned and smiled, that same gentle smile that used to melt her. "You're home early." "I had errands," she said, forcing a laugh. "I went to see a lawyer. About refinancing." He nodded without suspicion. "Good idea. Rates are crazy these days." That was Noah. He believed her. Always. His trust was maddening. It stripped her of guilt, made her lies sound justified. She looked at him, this man who had given her stability, peace, and loyalty, and felt nothing but boredom. Because peace didn't excite her anymore. Chaos did. Her phone buzzed. Ethan, did you file?" "Lana, almost. He suspects nothing." "Ethan, good. Once it's done, you'll never have to see that house again." She stared at the message and smiled faintly, unaware that Noah was watching her reflection in the glass door. He saw the flicker of a smirk that didn't belong to the woman he once knew, but he said nothing. He set the knife down quietly, wiped his hands, and went upstairs. That night, Noah lay awake beside her, listening to her breathing. He remembered every promise they'd made, every night she'd fallen asleep with her head on his chest. He also remembered the call Daniel had made earlier, the one he hadn't mentioned. "You were right," Daniel had said. "Ethan Miles is buying shell companies in your sector. He's planning a hostile takeover." Noah had smiled, then a small, bitter smile. He didn't need to ask who was funding Ethan's move. He already knew. The next morning, Lana kissed him on the cheek out of habit, not love. "Don't wait up," she said lightly. "I might have dinner with a friend." He looked at her, eyes steady. "Take your time." When she left, Noah sat alone in the quiet house. The sunlight hit the floor, and he could almost see the ghosts of their laughter. He walked to his office, opened a drawer, and pulled out a black folder, one he'd been building for months. Inside were photographs, signed contracts, voice recordings, and one simple note in his handwriting: "When loyalty dies, justice is born." As he closed the drawer, his phone buzzed again. Another call from Daniel. "Everything's in place," Daniel said. "You sure you want to go through with this?" Noah's voice was calm. "She already has." That evening, Lana texted Ethan. "It's done. The papers are ready. And across the city, in a boat skyscraper with his name hidden behind shell corporations, Noah Carter smiled for the first time in months. He'd just become the most dangerous man she'd ever betrayed. The courtroom was colder than Lana expected, the kind of cold that seeps under silk and settles in bone. She sat beside her lawyer, diamond earrings glinting under fluorescent light, while Noah sat across the aisle, calm, expressionless, the same man she'd once called too quiet. The judge read through the settlement details. Lana's lawyer whispered that this would be quick, that Noah had no real fight left in him, and she believed it, because that's what she wanted to believe. When it was time to speak, Noah rose slowly, buttoning his navy jacket. "Your Honor," he said gently, "I have no objections. If this is what my wife wants, she can have it." There was no anger, no bitterness, just something empty, something final. Lana glanced up, expecting a crack in his composure, a plea, a question, anything. But his calmness unnerved her. It was like he'd already moved on while she was still performing. The divorce was finalized in 20 minutes. 20 minutes to erase 10 years of marriage. When the gavel struck, Lana exhaled like a prisoner released. Outside, Ethan was waiting by his black Bentley, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You did it," he said. "You're free." Free! The words shimmered in her mind like champagne bubbles. That night, they celebrated at his penthouse overlooking downtown Dallas. Gold lights spilled across marble floors. Ethan raised a glass. "To new beginnings. To bigger lives," she corrected, laughing. But freedom came with an aftertaste, the kind that lingered. Because the next morning, as she scrolled through her phone, she saw photos from the divorce hearing trending online. Someone had leaked the story. Billionaire investor Ethan Miles linked to divorce of quiet automotive executive Noah Carter's wife. She frowned. "Who leaked this?" Ethan brushed it off. "Public curiosity. Happens all the time." But there was more. Her name was everywhere. Whispers in social circles, judgmental comments online, former friends suddenly unavailable for lunch. The glow she craved started to burn. 2 weeks later, Noah sent her a single text. "Thank you for signing. You've given me peace I never knew I needed." She threw the phone across the room. Peace. Always peace. Even in loss, he was calm. That calmness haunted her more than any insult could have. Meanwhile, Noah sat in a private boardroom, 40 stories above the city, surrounded by his legal and finance team. The name Carter Automotive glowed on the wall, but the logo had changed. Beneath it was a new line, a division of Carter Holdings Group. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the skyline. "Acquire every company Ethan Miles owns. Quietly. No public move until Phase 3. "Yes, sir," Daniel replied. Phase 3. That was when Lana and Ethan would feel the ground shift beneath them, not through rumor, but through ruin. Back in the penthouse, Lana was learning that luxury and loyalty don't coexist. Ethan had begun coming home later. Phone locked, excuses rehearsed. The same patterns she once practiced on Noah were now practiced on her. One night, she reached for his phone as he showered and froze. A message flashed on the screen. "See you in Paris, baby. Can't wait. Olivia." Her hands trembled. Paris. The dream she once described to Noah. The one she'd chased through lies. When Ethan stepped out, towel around his waist, she held up the phone. "Who's Olivia?" He smirked. "Don't start this, Lana. You knew what this was." "What this was," she shouted. "You made me leave my husband." Ethan's tone sharpened. "Correction, you left him. I just gave you a place to land." And for the first time, the room felt smaller than Noah's quiet kitchen ever did. That night, Lana sat alone by the window, staring at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Noah was working, breathing, existing without her. The man she thought was a nobody, the man she'd thrown away. But what if he wasn't who she thought he was? What if she'd divorced the one man who could destroy the world she just stepped into? She didn't know it yet, but Noah had already begun. The first signs of Noah's revenge came like whispers, too subtle to notice, too perfectly timed to question. Ethan's investors began pulling out without warning. His trusted accountant vanished overseas. 2 of his biggest contracts were abruptly terminated due to conflict of interest. At first, Ethan blamed bad luck, market fluctuation, even politics. But luck doesn't move with precision. Luck doesn't strike with the calm patience of a man who has waited to be underestimated. Noah Carter never raised his voice. He didn't need to. His power was in silence, and silence was a weapon people never saw coming. It began on a Thursday. Ethan's assistant burst into his office, pale. "Sir, the new tech deal's been canceled. Their board says a new investor bought their controlling shares." Ethan slammed his pen. "Who?" They didn't say. The next day, another email arrived, a merger denial from a financial institution that had backed him for years. The sender's domain bore a familiar name, Carter Holdings Group. Ethan froze. That couldn't be. Carter Automotive was small. Stable, sure, but not powerful. He didn't know there even was a holdings group. Across the city, Noah watched every tremor unfold from a glass office overlooking downtown. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He just listened as Daniel Cole listed the acquisitions. "We now own 52% of Miles Tech subsidiaries. That includes the real estate trust, offshore logistics, and even the digital patent firm. We can collapse his liquidity anytime." "Not yet," Noah said quietly. "Let him think he's still breathing." Meanwhile, Lana's perfect world was beginning to fracture. The party slowed, the calls from friends dwindled, and Ethan's temper began to show. He was no longer charming, he was defensive, angry, cornered. She caught him pacing the penthouse late at night, phone pressed tight against his ear. Every conversation ended with, "Find out who's behind it." One evening, he snapped at her for ordering new jewelry. "We're cutting costs, Lana. You think money grows out of my suits?" She flinched. "You're not the man you used to be." He laughed bitterly. "Neither are you." Those words hit harder than she expected. That night, she scrolled through old photos, Noah cooking dinner, fixing a leaky sink, reading beside her in silence. She'd called that boring. Now, it looked like peace. Real peace. And she'd thrown it away for glitter that was already fading. Across town, Noah stood at his parents' grave, hands tucked in his pockets. "You were right, Dad," he whispered. "Kindness doesn't save people. It exposes them." He looked down at the tombstone and sighed. "I gave her everything that mattered. Trust, love, patience. Now she'll learn what happens when you mistake those for weakness." By the end of the month, Ethan's empire was collapsing. The banks froze his accounts. The media smelled blood. Headlines screamed, "Ethan Miles under investigation for fraudulent dealings." His name, once gold, turned to poison. And the one man who could have helped him was the same man he'd betrayed. Lana watched the panic unfold, confusion twisting into fear. "How can everything go wrong so fast?" she whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He sat in silence, scrolling through an article on his tablet. The new owner of his lost companies had been revealed. Noah Carter, billionaire CEO of Carter Holdings Group. The tablet slipped from his hands. That's impossible," he stammered. Lana's heart stopped. "Noah? My Noah?" Ethan turned to her, pale as glass. "You didn't just leave a husband, Lana. You left the man who owns everything." The room went silent. Then, slowly, a realization crawled over her face. She had betrayed not a simple man, but an empire. Somewhere in the city, Noah leaned back in his chair, looking out at the skyline. His phone buzzed with Daniel's message. "Miles is finished. Phase 5 complete." Noah typed his reply with calm precision. "Good. Now let them see what peace costs." The morning it broke, Dallas woke up to chaos. News anchors interrupted programs with breaking headlines. Tabloids exploded online, and social feeds bled one name across every trending chart. Ethan Miles' scandal, secret affair, corporate fraud, and a billionaire's revenge. Lana Carter's phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Calls, messages, mentions. Photos of her stepping out of Ethan's car flooded the internet. Every angle, every timestamp. Someone had compiled a digital timeline. The affair that brought down a billion-dollar empire. She sat frozen on the bed, wrapped in a silk robe, watching her world burn in real time. Ethan burst into the room, half-dressed, shouting, "Who leaked this? Who the hell had those photos?" I don't know," she stammered. "You said no one knew about us." He slammed his fist against the dresser. "Someone knew. Someone's feeding the press. This isn't random." And as if the universe itself wanted to answer, the TV behind them flickered to a live press conference. The logo on the screen hit like a bullet. Carter Holdings Group. Noah stood at a podium, immaculate in a charcoal suit. His voice was calm, steady, Lethal. Integrity is the foundation of our company, he said, and any organization found violating ethical standards will face immediate severance of partnership and full legal prosecution. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Carter, is it true Ethan Miles attempted to defraud your company during a joint venture last year? Noah looked directly into the camera, and the city fell silent. That's correct, he said, and I trusted him. Personally. He didn't mention Lana's name. He didn't have to. The world already knew. Her face was in every headline beside Ethan's. Wife leaves unknown, executive for billionaire rival turns out, ex-husband owns everything. Lana's chest tightened until she couldn't breathe. She grabbed her purse, shaking. We have to fix this. We have to talk to him. Ethan's voice cracked. He's not taking your calls, Lana. He doesn't want to talk. He's destroying us, and he's enjoying every second of it. She stared at him, the man she'd thrown her life at, and saw something she'd never seen before. Fear. Real, helpless fear. Ethan Miles, the untouchable billionaire, was unraveling. Hours later, their penthouse was surrounded by paparazzi. Lawyers started calling. Then the subpoena arrived, a thick white envelope bearing Noah's name. Lana's hands trembled as she opened it. The words blurred. Defamation. Breach of confidentiality. Emotional damages. The claim was worth more than everything she and Ethan owned combined. Her phone buzzed again, a private message from an unknown number. She opened it. Noah, you thought I was just a man who kept the lights on. Now I'm the one turning them off. She dropped the phone. The air left her lungs. Across town, Noah watched the coverage from his office. Daniel stood beside him, expression unreadable. It's brutal, Noah. You sure you want to go this far? Noah's gaze didn't waver. She took everything that was sacred and turned it into a lie. I'm not hurting her, Daniel. I'm simply letting truth finish what betrayal started. Meanwhile, Ethan's empire collapsed overnight. Board members resigned, investors fled, and the Securities Commission froze his assets pending investigation. His company's stock plummeted by 83% in a single day. At 11:47 p.m., Lana drove to Noah's house. She parked outside, shaking under the rain, watching the warm light glowing from inside the home she'd once ruled. Through the window, she saw him laughing softly with a woman, Claire Jennings, his assistant, the one who'd always been there. Lana's vision blurred. Her world spun. She realized this wasn't just revenge. This was replacement. Noah had erased her completely, not out of hate, but out of peace, the kind that doesn't forgive. She pressed her forehead to the steering wheel and whispered, "What did I do?" But it was already done. Inside, Noah poured Claire a cup of tea. His voice was low. "Tomorrow we start the court filings. The rest will follow." Claire hesitated. "And when it's over?" He looked toward the rain-streaked window where a figure sat motionless in a parked car. "When it's over," he said, "I'll finally be free." The courthouse overflowed with cameras and murmurs that morning. People pressed against the marble pillars, clutching tabloids that screamed, "The billionaire, the betrayal, and the bloodline." Inside courtroom 7, every seat was taken. Lana Carter sat beside her attorney, pale and shaking, mascara clinging to lashes that once framed ambition. Ethan Miles sat 2 rows behind her, hollow-eyed, his fortune dismantled, his name now a public joke. And at the center of it all, Noah Carter, calm, immaculate, unreadable. His very presence quieted the room. He wasn't there to argue. He was there to finish. Judge Marion Blake entered, her robe sweeping like gravity itself. "This is case number 3218. Noah Carter versus Lana Carter and Ethan Miles. Allegations, defamation, fraud, and paternity deceit." The last 2 words rippled through the crowd like thunder. Lana's head jerked toward Noah. "Paternity deceit?" she whispered to her lawyer. "What is she talking about?" Noah rose slowly, eyes fixed on her. "Your Honor, I've requested DNA verification for both minors born during our marriage. I have reason to believe neither is biologically mine." Gasps shattered the silence. Lana's body went rigid. "That's a lie," she shouted, voice cracking. Judge Blake rapped the gavel. "Mrs. Carter, you'll remain silent until it's your turn to speak." But Lana couldn't. The fear crawled up her spine like electricity. She turned toward Ethan, whose face was pale, lips pressed tight. He refused to look at her. The judge nodded to the clerk, who opened a sealed envelope. Paper rustled like a death sentence. According to the results from the court-certified DNA laboratory, the clerk read, neither Olivia Carter nor Jacob Carter share genetic lineage with Mr. Noah Carter. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Voices collided. Lana's scream cut through it all. No, that can't be true. She turned to Ethan, grabbing his sleeve. Say something. Tell them it's wrong. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. Lana, stop. You knew? She breathed. You knew and you let me. Her words dissolved into sobs. Noah stood motionless, his expression unreadable. For years, he said quietly, I raised another man's children, while you told me I was enough. I was never angry until you called me ordinary. You wanted wealth, Lana. You got it. Just not the kind you expected. Judge Blake's voice steadied the chaos. The court will proceed with evidence. Daniel Cole, Noah's attorney, stepped forward. Your Honor, we present documented proof of Mrs. Carter's falsified marital disclosures, hidden joint accounts with Mr. Miles, and illegally transferred funds amounting to $3.2 million. Lana clutched her chest. Those accounts, Ethan said they were temporary. Silence, the judge barked. The prosecution continued like a symphony of ruin. Photographs, bank statements, emails, each one a nail, each one a memory dying in public view. When the judge finally ruled, her words carried the weight of judgment and mercy intertwined. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Noah Carter. Mrs. Carter and Mr. Miles are found guilty of financial deception, moral fraud, and defamation. All properties, assets, and joint accounts are to be seized. Custody rights of the minors are revoked until further determination. Lana gasped. My children! The judge looked over her glasses. Children that, by law, are not your husband's. Custody will be reassigned upon review of paternity. Lana collapsed to the floor, her sobs echoing against marble. Ethan buried his face in his hands. Noah gathered his documents with slow precision. As he walked past her, she reached for his sleeve. Noah, please, please, don't take them from me. They're all I have. He paused, eyes soft but cold. You took everything sacred from me. Now you'll learn what nothing feels like. He stepped past her, leaving her kneeling on the cold floor beneath a sea of flashing cameras. The image would go viral within hours, the billionaire who forgave no one. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Noah, is it true you're rejecting the children? He stopped just long enough to answer. They were never mine to reject. He climbed into his car and drove away, the city flashing by like memories he'd outgrown. Behind him, Lana's sobs became background noise in a world that no longer remembered her name. Inside that silence, Noah finally smiled, not out of victory, but release. Rain poured over Dallas like the sky itself was mourning. A week had passed since the court verdict, yet the city still buzzed with the echo of scandal. Every screen, every whisper, every headline still carried the same two names: Lana Carter, Ethan Miles. Their faces were no longer lit by camera flashes of luxury galas, but by the harsh glare of shame. The mansion Ethan once called home had been foreclosed. The penthouse auctioned off to pay legal debts. His fleet of cars? Gone. The staff? Vanished. The friends who used to toast to his brilliance now avoided his calls like he carried a disease. Inside a dim motel room off the interstate, Lana sat on the edge of a bed that smelled like bleach, scrolling through old photos. Her diamond ring, once a symbol of her climb, now lay pawned for rent. She stopped on a picture of Noah laughing in their kitchen, flour on his hands, cooking her pancakes after a night she'd complained about living small. She had called him boring. Now she'd sell her soul for that same silence again. Ethan emerged from the bathroom, tie undone, hair disheveled. He looked older, smaller. They froze my accounts, he muttered. Every single one. Offshore too. Lana didn't look up. You said you could fix this. He laughed bitterly. Fix it? The man owns the banks now, Lana. The banks? He's not just rich, he's untouchable. Her eyes filled with tears she couldn't control. What are we supposed to do? Ethan turned on her, rage cracking through his voice. You wanted this. You said he was nothing. You said he'd never fight back. You lied to me. I lied? She shot back. You used me. You said you loved me. I loved what you represented, a trophy. And now you're broken glass, Lana. You were my way into his world, and he shut every door. The slap she gave him echoed like thunder, but he didn't flinch. He just grabbed his coat and walked out. That was the last time she ever saw Ethan Miles. 2 days later, his mugshot flooded the news. Ethan Miles arrested for fraud, money laundering, and perjury. Lana watched the footage alone in that room, clutching her knees, shaking uncontrollably. She had traded a loyal heart for a shiny dream, and the dream had eaten her alive. Meanwhile, across town, Noah Carter stood in a quiet office that overlooked the city he now owned, piece by piece. Reporters still begged for interviews. Analysts called his revenge strategic genius, and talk shows dissected his stoic composure. But behind the power, Noah's face remained unreadable. Daniel entered, setting a folder on the desk. The final court transfer is complete. They're finished. Noah nodded slowly. Good. Let it rest. Daniel hesitated. You don't look happy. Noah exhaled. Happiness isn't the point, Daniel. Peace is. That evening, Noah drove alone to the old diner, where he used to take Lana during their early years, when they couldn't afford much, but still laughed over cheap coffee. The place hadn't changed, but he had. Sitting by the window, he noticed someone familiar at the counter, Claire Jennings, his former assistant. She looked up, surprised. Noah? She said softly. He smiled faintly. Claire, didn't expect to see you here. Didn't expect to see you anywhere outside a boardroom. She teased gently. I heard everything. He nodded. Yeah, everything. There was a silence between them, not heavy, but healing. Claire looked at him, eyes warm. I always told you kindness isn't weakness. He stared out the window, rain tapping the glass. Maybe not, but it does leave scars. She reached across the table, her hand brushing his. Scars mean you survived. For the first time in months, Noah laughed quietly, genuinely, the kind of laugh that comes after storms. As they talked, the camera of life panned back from the diner's soft lights to the wet streets, from the ruined past to the hint of something whole. Lana Carter, once Dallas's most envied wife, now waited tables at a roadside cafe under a different name. Each night, she'd look up at passing cars, wondering if one of them carried the man she'd destroyed or the one she still loved. But Noah Carter had already left that world behind. He wasn't the man she betrayed anymore. He was the man her betrayal created. Months passed, and Dallas began to forget. Headlines shifted to newer scandals, and Noah Carter quietly rebuilt what the chaos had broken. He no longer hid behind the ordinary mask. He let the world know his name, his work, his worth. Yet at night, when the city lights blurred against his office glass, he still felt a small echo of something unfinished. Claire noticed it. She'd become more than the assistant who once took his calls. She was the only person who could read the silence between his sentences. She'd walk into his office with coffee and say, "You're thinking again." He'd smile faintly. "Is that a crime?" "It is when it keeps you from living," she'd reply, half teasing, half truth. They began spending evenings outside the boardroom. A concert here, a charity dinner there. Claire laughed easily. She reminded him of the life that existed beyond revenge. One evening, as they left a fundraiser, she said softly, "You still look for her sometimes, don't you?" Noah didn't answer at first. "Maybe I look for who I was when she loved me." Claire slipped her arm through his. "Then stop looking backward. That man's already forgiven you." Across town, forgiveness was a foreign word. Lana lived in a one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a job that barely covered groceries. She'd lost the children to state custody after Ethan's arrest, her name blacklisted from every professional circle. Sometimes she'd walk downtown just to glimpse Noah's new headquarters, a mirrored tower, piercing the sky like justice made of glass. One afternoon, she finally gathered the courage to go inside. The receptionist stopped her before the elevators. "Do you have an appointment?" Lana's voice trembled. "Tell him his wife is here." Moments later, security escorted her out. She stood on the sidewalk, humiliated, watching the building shimmer like a world she could never enter again. That evening, Noah heard about it from Claire. "She came by," Claire said quietly. He looked up from his desk. "Did she?" She looked lost. He nodded slowly. "She's been lost for a long time." He rose, walked to the window, and watched the city pulse below. For the first time, pity touched him, not the soft kind, but the heavy kind that comes when anger finally burns out. I used to think destroying her would make me whole, he murmured. It didn't. It just made the silence louder. Claire stepped beside him. Then let's fill it with something else. Weeks later, Noah took her to a small garden he'd bought outside the city. No photographers, no headlines, just wind and open space. As they walked, he turned to her. You stayed when everyone else left. I don't want to spend another day mistaking quiet for emptiness. Claire smiled through tears. Then don't. Somewhere miles away, Lana watched their photo appear online. Noah Carter engaged to Claire Jennings. She stared at the screen until it blurred, whispering the only truth left to her. He really was the man I never saw. And for the first time, she didn't cry. She simply closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and let the darkness keep her company. The morning of Noah and Claire's wedding felt almost unreal. The sky was an impossible shade of blue, the kind that seems painted by mercy rather than weather. The ceremony was small, 30 guests, no reporters, no sponsors, no shareholders, just quiet music, soft laughter, and people who had known pain and stayed kind anyway. Noah stood beneath an arch of white roses, wearing the same cufflinks he'd worn the day he'd first married Lana. Not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder, love given honestly doesn't make a man weak, it makes him human. When Claire walked down the aisle, sunlight caught her veil, and for a moment he felt time itself pause. This was what peace looked like, not triumph, not revenge, just stillness after the storm. They exchanged vows simply. I don't promise perfection, Claire said, voice steady. Only honesty. Noah smiled. And I promise not to hide the crown or the scars. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the applause was gentle, almost reverent. After the reception, Noah slipped away for a moment, walking out toward the garden pond. The breeze carried the faint hum of the band playing behind him. For the first time in years, he didn't hear echoes of the past, no courtroom voices, no betrayal replaying like static, just the sound of wind through trees. A car door closed behind him. He turned. Lana stood at the edge of the path, thin, trembling, holding a small envelope. I shouldn't be here, she whispered. He didn't move closer. Then why are you? She swallowed. Because I needed to tell you. I'm sorry. Not the kind that fixes things, just the kind that tells the truth. He said nothing. She looked at the envelope in her hands. These are the adoption papers. Olivia and Jacob, Ethan's relatives, want to take them in. I thought you'd want to know. He nodded once. Thank you. Tears gathered in her eyes. You really did love me, didn't you? I did, he said quietly. And I still wish I hadn't had to learn what love costs. She took a shaky breath. You got your revenge. He shook his head. No. I got clarity. Revenge only burns until it runs out of fuel. Clarity lasts. For a long moment they stood there, the sound of the wind between them. Then she turned to leave. Lana, he said softly. She stopped, shoulders trembling. I forgive you, he said. Not for you. For me. She nodded once, not daring to turn around, and walked down the gravel path until the world swallowed her figure completely. Noah exhaled, the breath carrying years of weight. Claire appeared behind him, slipping her hand into his. Are you okay? He looked at her, the light catching in his eyes. I am now. They stood together, watching the water ripple with sunlight. The music from the reception drifted through the air, warm, alive, unbroken. Far away, Lana boarded a bus heading out of Dallas. She stared out the window as the skyline faded, whispering one last truth to herself. Kindness was never weakness. It was everything I threw away. Back at the garden, Noah drew Claire closer. To new beginnings, he murmured. She smiled. To peaceful ones. As the camera of life pulled back over the garden, over the city, over the scars that had finally healed, Noah Carter's story closed where it had begun, in silence. But this time, it wasn't the silence of betrayal. It was the silence of peace, hard-earned, love rediscovered, and a man who finally understood that strength is not in revenge, but in letting go.